Welcome to Hebrew Insights. This channel is dedicated to revealing what has been lost in translation, providing biblical insights to help solidify your foundation, connecting the Christian faith to its Hebrew roots, and restoring the new to the old. Join me on a journey through the scriptures from a Hebrew perspective.
Today's topic, the Helpmate. Genesis 2:18 onwards is the story of the creation of woman. Like the creation of man, this story is in detail. It described item by item and gives the full particulars of. It is in focus, a state in which things are seen clearly and sharply, a state or condition in which something can be clearly understood. In 2:18, we read in the English, "And the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him." The first word we're going to look at is translated in the English as alone. It is badad in the Hebrew, and it means to be by itself, to be alone, and to be without. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as helper. This is azar, and it is an aid, one who provides support to another. It is also a partner, a person that takes part with another in the same activity. They are individuals with interests and investments in a business or enterprise, among whom expenses, profits, and losses are shared. It also means a counterpart, a person holding a position or performing a function that corresponds to that of another person in another place. And this comes from the root as, which means to strengthen. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as comparable. This is nagad in the Hebrew, and it is to be opposite, in a complementary role to another. When we retranslate this verse with the Hebrew understanding, we see Yahovah Elohim declared, "It is not good that the man is by himself. I will make for him a counterpart as his opposite." We see here that the aid is purposed to play the supportive role to the leading role in this story. When we look up the definition for supportive role, it means a fairly important but not leading part in a play or film. When we look up the definition for the leading role, it is the largest, most important role, and that role has been given to the man. This aid has been cast as the supporting actor that complements the leading actor in a story. So when we look up the definition for supporting actor, it is an actor who performs a role in a play or film below that of the leading actor and above that of a bit part. When we look at the leading actor definition, it is an actor who performs the role of the protagonist, which is the lead character or main character of a film or play. The theater and film industries give separate awards to the best supporting actor, and this is because this role is very important. We see that Yahovah does the same in Proverbs 18:22. In this verse, we see that the aid is purposed as a partner, as a fellow worker in the carrying out of the work that was appointed by God, which is to serve him by observing his orders. And we saw that in the 15th verse of the 2nd chapter of Genesis. A partner is an ally, it is a friend, and a friend has your best interest at heart. An ally, a friend, is one who can be leaned on in times of trouble. You can look to them for aid, for help, for strength, additional strength. Think of allies formed between countries. When a country goes to war and they need additional strength, they will rely on their allies to join the fight. This additional strength and support is the idea of what is given behind this word. In Genesis 2:19, we read, Yehovah Elohim had previously formed from the soil every beast of the field and every bird of the air. He brought each to the man to observe what he called to it. All which the man called to each living being, he named it. In this verse, we're seeing that Yehovah brought the animals which were already created to the man to observe what he would call them and to see if his partner, his counterpart, would be found among them. So we see that man has intelligence. At this point, man has been made to be intelligent. He has knowledge. He is no caveman, as we are led to believe. He was wise enough to give name, which is purpose. When you name a thing, you give that thing a purpose. He was wise enough to give names to all of the animals. What we also see here is a moment between the creator and his creation, a proud fatherly moment, so to speak, where he brings the animals that he created to see what the man that he created would call them. He is inviting him to take part in creation. Though he did not create these beings, he is now creating the name that he would call the animals. In Genesis 2:20, we read, the man called names to all the cattle and to the birds of the sky and to every beast of the field. For the man, no aid was found as his opposite. So we see the obvious that among the animals, no partner was found to be the opposite of the man. Now, that kind of seems like it would be obvious because man is of one species and animals are of another. So why would this be in the scriptures? It's an obvious point, and it's showing us the time and thought and effort that God took to create the counterpart of man. It was very methodical. It wasn't an afterthought, so to speak. So this is included in the scriptures so that we see the process that God went through and the thought and attention towards the man. This is why we find in Leviticus 18 the command that man and woman should not have sexual relations with animals. This is because the animal is not the counterpart of man. They are different species and cannot come together. The same as a dog would not lay with a cat. They are different. They are not one another's counterpart. So naturally, they would not be inclined to lay with one another. This is what the scriptures are speaking of. This is where it comes from. In verse 21, we read in the English, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. The first word we're going to look at is translated in the English as fall. It is nafal in the Hebrew, and it means to cast down. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as deep sleep, and it is radam in the Hebrew, and it means to induce a loss of consciousness, to anesthetize. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as rib, and it is salah in the Hebrew, and it means side. When we retranslate this verse with the Hebrew understanding, we see Yehovah Elohim anesthetized the man, and he slept. He took one rib from his side, and he closed up the skin underneath it. The rib from his side indicates a partnership, a fellow worker or laborer, as we spoke of earlier, who is serving God with the man side by side. In verse 22, we read in the English, "Then the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man." The word we're going to look at in the English is translated as made. It is bana in the Hebrew, and this means to build, to construct, to assemble, and to establish. And when we retranslate this verse with the Hebrew understanding, we see Yehovah Elohim assembled the rib which he took from the man into a woman and presented her to the man. So we see that the woman is built to fulfill that supporting role as the partner we saw in 2:18 to the man. She is to be side by side with the man. The image that we get here is the same image that we see in Ezekiel 37 when he speaks to the dry bones and they are assembled. This is what we are seeing here as he assembles the woman from one bone, which is the rib from the man. In verse 23, we read in the English, "And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." The first word we're going to look at is translated as now in the English. It is pa'am in the Hebrew, and it means to impel. It is a reason and a driving force. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as bone. It is atzam in the Hebrew, and it is bone. It is strength and might. The next word we're going to look at is translated as woman in the English, and it is isha in the Hebrew, and it means woman. And the root of this word is also our next word, which is ish. Ish is a man, and the woman comes from the root man. And we see that the woman physically comes from the man. When we retranslate this verse with the Hebrew understanding, what we see is the man declared, "This is the driving force, strength from my strength and weakness from my weakness. To this I call woman, because from man this was taken." Now, we're seeing a lot here. The first thing I'm going to point out is that the man's response in saying that this is his driving force, we see that the man is infatuated with the woman. The driving force of his life is not to be the woman. She is not the reason why he lives. That is his creator's position, not his partner's position. We see that in this verse, the complementary aid to the man is found in the woman. She was created in order to be that very thing to the man. So as he stated, she is strength from his strength to his strength, and weakness from his weakness to his weakness. So we see that the woman is both the strength and the weakness of the man, and we will see this play out in future verses. We also see that the purpose of the woman that God gave to her is reflected in the name that the man gave her. It states that he called her woman because from man she was taken. So the purpose that was given was the man's counterpart, his partner, his opposite. And we see this in her name. And this is why she is called woman, because from man she was taken. We see that the aid to the man came from within him to be outside of him and alongside him. The woman is an appendage, And appendage has two definitions. And the first one that we're going to look at is a projecting, which is an extending outward beyond something else. So it is a projecting part of a living organism with a distinct appearance or function. She is the appendage of the man. We also see that if woman is man's counterpart, then man is the woman's counterpart. Man has his counterpart, and woman has her counterpart found within one another. This is why a man is not to have sexual relations with a man, and a woman is not to have sexual relations with a woman, because the woman is for the man and the man is for the woman. In verse 24, we read in the English, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." The first word we're going to look at is translated in the English as leave, and this is azav in the Hebrew, and this means to detach, to go away from, to desert, to neglect, and to abandon. And this comes from the root az, which means to strengthen. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as joined. This is davak in the Hebrew, and it means to attach, to attribute importance or value to cling, which is to hold on tightly to, and it also means an appendage. And the second meaning of appendage is a thing that is added or attached to something larger or more important. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as one. It is achad in the Hebrew, and it is a unit, something that is part of the whole, as in woman from man, as in Hebrew thought, everything is a part of something. When we retranslate this verse with the Hebrew understanding, what we see is, upon this man shall detach from his father and his mother and attach himself with his woman. They are of one flesh. Now, looking at this verse, we are seeing that the man's help no longer comes from his parents, but from his partner and fellow worker. We see that the man and the woman are one unit. It's not just a reflection of marriage, it is a reflection of how they are to be towards one another as a partnered, a unified and undivided species. They are to be one. What God has put together, let no man separate. They should not be divided, man and woman, amongst each other, as they are each other's counterpart. In Proverbs 18:24, part B of the verse, we see this verse come to life. It states that in the English, there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. And the word closer is the same word that we're seeing here, which is to cleave, to attach. And what we're seeing here is the friend is actually in the Hebrew, it doesn't say friend. It says, but there is a love that sticks closer than a brother. This verse we're seeing in Proverbs 18:24, part B, and it's speaking of the woman. It's stating that the love between a man and a woman is closer than that of a brother. In verse 25, we read in the English, "And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." The first word we're going to look at is translated as naked in the English. It is aram in the Hebrew, and it means to be cautious, to be prudent, shrewd, astute, sharp, perceptive, and intelligent. The next word we're going to look at is translated in the English as ashamed, and it is bouche, and this means to be ashamed. And to be ashamed means to be guilty because of one's actions. It means to be dried up, to be withered, and to be dead. When we retranslate this verse with the Hebrew understanding, we read, "Two of them were cautious, the man and his wife, and they were not guilty." What were they cautious of? They were cautious to walk in obedience in order to avoid disobedience. And to avoid disobedience is to avoid being guilty. To be guilty is to commit an offense against God by transgressing his boundaries. The man and the woman were innocent. They were righteous. They were functioning within the limits that were set upon them by their Creator. As we do every week, here are your connections for verse 18. Verse 19. Verse 23. And verse 25. I'd like to close in prayer. Yehovah bless you and guard you. Yehovah make his face shine upon you and grant you favor. Yehovah lift up his face toward you and grant you restitution. Place my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Hebrew Insights, or click the subscription button in order to receive notifications regarding next week's video. Until then, Yehovah bless you and guard you.